Before we begin, welcome to Cinematic Intel. If you appreciate deep forensic storytelling, consider subscribing to the channel and drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're watching from tonight. Now, let's begin. In the dust-choked suburbs of Gaza City, in a concrete room hidden beneath a failing citrus grove, Fadi al-Masri was composing a symphony of destruction. He was not a warrior in the traditional sense. He was thin, with the pale indoor skin of a scholar and the calloused, chemical-stained fingers of a craftsman. To the children in his neighborhood, he was a quiet, pious uncle. To the leadership of Hamas, he was the architect. Fadi was a new breed of militant, a man who had transcended the crude chemistry of his predecessors. His predecessors had mixed fertilizer and sugar, packing pipes with crude shrapnel. Fadi worked with microcontrollers, GPS spoofing software, and 3D printed airframes. He was the mind behind the Ababil, a new generation of unmanned aerial vehicle, a precision-guided munition built from drone parts ordered off consumer websites and rocket propellant refined in a converted soda factory. His current workshop was a marvel of improvisation, wires snaked from car batteries to humming laptops. A disassembled satellite dish was repurposed as a signal booster. On his main screen, grainy test footage showed one of his drones, painted sky blue, successfully evading an Israeli Iron Dome simulation. He was close. He was designing a system not of individual rockets, but of swarms, a coordinated multi-vector assault designed to overwhelm the most sophisticated air defense system in the world. He believed he was leveling the scales, giving his people a sword that could finally pierce the armor of their occupier. This obsession made him a ghost. Fadi did not sleep in the same place for more than 2 nights. He did not use social media. He communicated through a complex, frustrating system of paper couriers and memorized messages. He trusted no one, and he trusted nothing electronic. He owned a simple, battered Nokia 3310, which he used only for emergencies, and whose battery he kept separate from the device, wrapped in tinfoil in his breast pocket. He was a high-value target, but he was also an impossible one. He was protected not just by armed guards, but by a thick, suffocating blanket of analog secrecy. He was a 21st century ghost in a 1st century city. And in Tel Aviv, in the glass and steel headquarters of the Mossad, this ghost was causing a strategic migraine. The file on his desk was 3 inches thick, filled with grainy satellite photos, failed intercepts, and a growing list of attacks that bore his unique, sophisticated signature. The question was no longer if they had to stop him, but how you stop a man who lives entirely offline. The answer, as it turned out, would not be found in the sky or in a computer. It would be found in the most basic, most ancient of human flaws: the family. The Mossad's Caesarea department, responsible for running agents inside hostile territories, had a problem. Fadi al-Masri was a black hole. Their signals intelligence, SIGINT, from Unit 8200 was useless. The man didn't talk. Their satellite and drone surveillance, VISINT, was inconclusive. He moved between civilian-dense areas using underground tunnels and nondescript vehicles. They couldn't get a missile, a bomb, or a ground team near him without risking catastrophic collateral damage and a political explosion. "We are blind," the head of Caesarea said, slamming the Fadi file shut in a briefing room at the Glilot Junction. "He is building a weapon that will render our primary defense obsolete, and we are blind. We need an in." This is the cold, patient work of intelligence. It is not the high-speed chase. It is the slow, agonizing human excavation. For months, Mossad researchers in the unit, their psychological warfare and research division, built a detailed map of Fadi's life. Not his life, which was impenetrable, but the life of those around him. They mapped his wife's family, his childhood friends, his distant cousins. They cross-referenced financial records, medical histories, and travel manifests. They were searching for a crack. They found it in Kamal. Kamal was Fadi's second cousin, a man who ran a small, struggling electronics shop in Khan Yunis. He was not a militant. He was a merchant, and a bad one. He was in debt, deeply, to suppliers in Egypt. He had also, Mossad researchers noted, recently applied for a medical visa for his young daughter, who suffered from a rare blood disorder, to a hospital in Germany. The visa had been denied. Kamal was the perfect target. non-ideological, desperate, and with a legitimate, non-suspicious reason to be in proximity to Fadi al-Masri. The architect was known to trust and provide for his extended family. The operation to recruit Kamal was a masterpiece of soft coercion. A Katza, case officer posing as a German NGO representative, met Kamal in a neutral third country location, ostensibly to discuss his daughter's medical case. The conversation was gentle. They understood his plight. They could help. The visa, the treatment, the cost, all of it could be taken care of. Kamal wept with relief. Then came the turn. "There is one small thing we need from you, a favor for a friend. You know your cousin Fadi? He is a man of interest to us. Not to harm him, of course, just to understand his network. He is involved with dangerous people. We just want to know he is safe." Kamal knew instantly what this was. He was no fool. He was being asked to betray his family, his people. He refused, angry and scared. The Katza was patient. He slid a photograph across the table. It was not of Fadi. It was of Kamal's daughter, smiling, in her school uniform. "The treatment is very expensive, Kamal, and the clock is ticking. We are the only ones who can open the door. All you have to do is walk through it. We will never ask you to do anything that puts you in danger." It was a lie, but it was a beautiful one. The hook was set. Kamal, trapped between the life of his child and the life of his cousin, made the only choice he could. He became an asset. He was now the unseen bridge, the human vulnerability that Fado had overlooked. And his only job, his only task, was to deliver a gift. Back in Tel Aviv, the plan coalesced, born from a collaboration between three of Israel's most secretive units. Caesarea had the asset. Unit 8200, SIGINT, would handle the surveillance, and Kedon, the clandestine operational arm of the Mossad, would handle the delivery. The problem remained. Fadi didn't use electronics. Kamal reported that Fadi's paranoia was absolute. He had seen Fadi lecture his own men for bringing a smartwatch into a planning meeting. "They are listening to everything," Fadi would hiss. "The air is full of spies." "He's right," the Kedon commander noted dryly. "But his paranoia is our new opportunity. He is analog. We will force him to be digital. We will give him a tool he cannot resist." The plan was not to give Fadi a phone. It was to give him a specific phone. A clean device was sourced from a market in Eastern Europe. It was a new smartphone, top of the line, but one known for its security features. A model that would appeal to a man like Fadi. It was flown to a secure Mishlab, a technological lab run by the Mossad. Here, technicians in sterile clean suits disassembled it. This was not a simple bugging. The phone was being rebuilt, transformed from a communication device into a weapon. The standard battery was removed. In its place, the technicians fitted a custom-designed 3D printed power cell. Packed neatly beside it, insulated and shielded, was a 50-gram shaped charge of high-grade RDX. The charge was small, but its design was precise. It was engineered to detonate in a specific, focused cone, straight through the phone's earpiece speaker. But the real genius was in the trigger. The phone was not wired to explode on a timer or via a simple signal. That was too crude, too easily detected. Unit 8200's cyber warfare specialists had integrated a listening device, but it was dormant, buried deep in the phone's operating system. It would only be activated by a unique 128-bit encrypted audio signal, a digital whisper that 8200 could broadcast from anywhere. Once activated, the phone would work perfectly. It would make calls, send texts, browse the web. It would be Fadi's window to the world. But it would also be listening, its microphone passively streaming audio back to a listening post in the Negev desert. The RDX charge was linked to a separate, simple circuit, one that could only be armed by a specific sequence of audio tones. It was, in effect, a voice-activated bomb, and the voice would be that of a Mossad operator. The phone was reassembled. It passed every diagnostic. It was indistinguishable from a new device. It was sealed back in its original box, complete with factory plastic. It was a Trojan horse, not of wood, but of glass and silicon. The delivery was the most delicate phase of the operation. A single flicker of suspicion from Fadi would not only burn the asset Kamal, but would send Fadi deeper underground, perhaps permanently. The Qatsa met Kamal again, this time in a bustling market in Ramallah. The pressure on Kamal was immense. His daughter was already in Germany, her first treatment a success. He was now fully compromised, fully committed. "It is a gift," the Qatsa instructed, placing the boxed phone on the cafe table. "You must not seem nervous. You are proud. You have come into some money from your shop. We have made the deposits to your account to prove it. This is a gift of respect from a successful cousin to the family's great man. He is a man of technology. He will appreciate the gesture." Kamal's hands trembled as he took the box. He will not accept it. He trusts nothing. "He will accept it from you," the Qatsa said, his voice a cold reassurance. "He trusts family. And this phone, it is the most secure model on the market. Tell him that. Tell him it's encrypted, that it's a clean phone, not from here. He will understand. He needs a way to communicate. You are not giving him a threat. You are giving him a solution." The scene played out a week later, at a tense family dinner. It was a rare occasion for Fadi to emerge, surrounded by the human shield of his extended family. Kamal, his face slick with sweat, presented the gift. "Cousin Fadi," Kamal began, his voice cracking. "My business has been blessed. Allah has been good, and I wanted to honor you. I know you work with important things. This is for you. The most secure phone I could find. No one can listen. It is from Germany." Fadi stared at the box. His guards tensed. The air in the room became thin. Fadi's eyes, dark and analytical, bored into Kamal's. He was searching for the lie. "I do not use such things," Fadi said flatly. "Of course, cousin," Kamal said, his rehearsed lines coming to him. "But the world changes. You need to speak to your commanders. You need to see the reports. This is a tool, nothing more. A clean tool for your clean work. From family." He was offering Fadi exactly what the Mossad psychological profile predicted he craved: security, respect, and control. Fadi picked up the box. He turned it over. He examined the seals. They were perfect. He looked at Kamal, whose genuine, desperate fear he misinterpreted as simple nervousness. Slowly, Fadi nodded. "You have done well, Kamal. Thank you." He broke the seal and turned the phone on. Miles away, in the Unit 8200 Operations Center, a single dot on a digital map of Gaza turned from gray to green. A technician, watching a screen of cascading code, put down his coffee cup. He put on his headphones, leaned forward, and typed a single line into his console: "Asset active." Chapter 5. The Digital Shadow. For the next 6 weeks, Fadi al-Masri lived with a digital shadow. The Mossad operation entered its soak phase. The phone was a spectacular success, precisely because Fadi believed he had vetted it himself. He had his own technicians sweep it for bugs. They found nothing, of course. The kill switch was not a bug. It was a feature baked into the hardware, invisible to their rudimentary scans. Convinced of its security, Fadi began to integrate it into his life. He had been isolated, forced to rely on slow human messengers. Now he had a direct, encrypted line. He used it sparingly at first, then with growing confidence. In the listening post, a team of analysts, led by a young woman named Dahlia, began to build a portrait of Fadi's life, not in pixels, but in audio. Dahlia was a listener, a specialist in linguistic analysis and human psychology. She was not just translating his words, she was mapping his soul. She heard everything. She heard him argue with his suppliers in Sinai over the price of actuators. She heard him whisper encouragement to a young recruit, his voice paternal and firm. She heard him sing softly to his young son over the line when he was away, a lullaby that Dahlia's own grandmother used to sing. She heard the specific metallic scrape of the chair in his underground workshop. She heard the faint whine of the capacitors on his new drone prototypes as they charged. She learned to identify the voices of his inner circle, giving them code names. The voice, Sheikh Ahmed, his direct commander; the driver, the preacher, The phone's microphone was so sensitive that Dalia's team could map his locations by the ambient sound. The distant call to prayer from the Al-Omari Mosque meant he was in his northern safe house. The sound of a specific sputtering generator meant he was in the workshop beneath the grove. The sound of waves meant he was in a beachside apartment, meeting with high command. Fadi, the analog ghost, had been rendered in high-definition audio. He had become visible, but Dalia and her team were not just listening, they were waiting. The order from the Kaidan commander was absolute. We do not move until we have 3 things. 1. The target is alone. No collateral. 2. Positive voice identification of a high-value contact. We don't just want him, we want his network to know we got him. 3. An imminent threat confirmation. That confirmation came on a Tuesday. Fadi, his voice electric with excitement, called the voice, Sheikh Ahmed. "It is ready," Fadi said. "The Ababil swarm. The final test is tomorrow at dawn. We will launch 100 from 10 different points. The sky will be ours." Dalia logged the conversation. The file was flagged, encrypted, and sent to the Prime Minister's office. The imminent threat criteria had been met. The operation, codenamed Digital Whisper, was authorized. The green light was given. The authorization for a targeted elimination is a sterile, bureaucratic process that masks the profound violence at its core. In Tel Aviv, the green light protocol was initiated. The decision, made by the Prime Minister based on the imminent threat file, flowed back down the chain of command. In the Glilot headquarters, the mood shifted from passive surveillance to active hunting. The Kaidan team, the operators of the Mossad, took control of the operation. The 8200 listening post, where Dalia worked, was now their trigger. The psychological profile of Fadi, built over weeks of listening, was analyzed for the final pattern of life assessment. They knew from his calls that he always made a final check on his prototypes the night before a major test. He would be in the workshop, and critically, he would be alone. His paranoia meant he allowed no one near him when he was doing his final, sensitive work. The plan was set. They would wait for Fado to enter the workshop. They would wait for him to be deep in his work. Then, they would use the one man he trusted to call him in. They would have Sheikh Ahmed, the voice, place a call to Fadi. This was the masterstroke. The Mossad didn't need to spoof the call. They had a different method. Through their cyber warfare division, they had compromised the communication network of the Hamas leadership. They would not initiate the call themselves. They would simply encourage it. A false, high-priority intelligence report, designed to look like it came from a Hamas operative in Jerusalem, was leaked into Sheikh Ahmed's private message queue. The report was alarming, a rumor of an imminent Israeli raid on the workshop. The leak was designed to do one thing: panic Sheikh Ahmed into calling Fadi immediately, to warn him or to get a status update. At 10:00 p.m., Dalia, her headphones on, heard the generator in Fadi's workshop sputter to life. She heard his chair scrape. He was in location. At 10:15 p.m., the leaked report hit Sheikh Ahmed's desk. At 10:17 p.m., the trigger in Dalia's console began to flash. An incoming call to Fadi's phone. The caller ID, cross-referenced instantly, confirmed the target. It was the voice. The operation was live. The Kaidan commander stood behind Dalia. Is he alone? Dalia listened to the ambient sound. The generator. The metallic scrape. A soft hum. He is alone, she confirmed. The call is connecting. In the concrete room beneath the citrus grove, Fadi al-Masri was soldering a final connection. The air was thick with the smell of rosine and ozone. His Ababil drones, a row of 20, sat silent on metal shelves, their small optics gleaming. He was proud. This was the work of his life. It was art. His new phone, the one from Kamal, vibrated on the workbench. He glanced at the screen. Sheikh Ahmed, his commander. He wiped his hands on a rag, annoyed by the interruption, but obligated to answer. He picked up the phone. "Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh," Fadi said, holding the phone to his left ear as he continued to inspect a circuit board. "Fadi." The Sheikh's voice was tense, tinny through the speaker. "The test tomorrow. Are you ready? We have reports." The air is not safe. The air is never safe, Sheikh, Fadi said, a hint of pride in his voice. But it does not matter. My babies are ready. They are beautiful. 100 birds ready to fly. The dome will not know what hit it. By sunrise. In the listening post, Dahlia was transcribing, her fingers flying. The Kaidan commander watched his own monitor. The phone's internal sensors were streaming data. Temperature, normal. Battery level, nominal. Microphone, active. Positive ID on the voice, Dahlia said, her own voice flat, professional. Positive ID on the architect, replied her partner. Location confirmed. Subject is stationary. Conditions met, the commander said. He looked at Dahlia. Arm the circuit, on my mark. Dahlia typed a command. A simple encrypted audio tone, inaudible to the human ear, was piggybacked onto the incoming signal from Sheikh Ahmed's call. This was the handshake. The phone's hidden hardware received the tone, verified it, and silently armed the 50-gram RDX charge. A new icon, one invisible to Fadi, glowed red on the commander's screen. The weapon was hot. Fadi, oblivious, was still talking, his passion overflowing. You do not understand, Sheikh. This is not just a rocket. It is a key. It is the key that will unlock. Fadi, the Sheikh interrupted. I need you to be careful. We need you. If there is any risk, delay the test. Fadi laughed. A dry, confident sound. Risk is my business, old friend. Do not worry. Tomorrow we will. The commander looked at Dahlia. Now, send it. Dahlia's hand did not tremble. She had trained for this. This was not a person. This was a target. This was an imminent threat. She pressed a single key on her console. The command sent a second, different audio tone down the line. It was the execute file. For Fadi al-Masri, the universe ended in a microsecond. He was in the middle of a word, change. The signal hit the phone's circuit. The detonator fired. The 50-gram shaped charge, positioned less than an inch from his left temple, exploded. It was not a large explosion. It was a focused one. The force designed to erupt through the earpiece was precise, devastating, and instantaneous. For Fadi, there was no sound, no pain, just a spike of impossible heat and light, a catastrophic, violent pressure, and then nothing. He was gone before his brain could register the event. The phone and the hand holding it were vaporized. The blast, focused inward, was surprisingly quiet. The drones on his shelves were undisturbed. The single light bulb above him flickered, but did not go out. Miles away, in Dahlia's headphones, the sound was horrific. She had been listening to Fadi's voice, a clear mid-range baritone. In the middle of a syllable, his voice was replaced by a single deafening digital crack. It was the sound of the microphone and the charge detonating simultaneously. It was a noise so loud it physically hurt, a percussive pop of overpressurized static. This was immediately followed by a new sound, the sound of the open line, now at the other end. Sheikh Ahmed's voice, suddenly frantic. Fadi, Fadi, what was that? Fadi, answer me. Dahlia was frozen. All she could hear was the Sheikh's voice, echoing in her headset, and a faint, wet, gurgling sound that had replaced Fadi's. It was a sound she would never, ever forget. Fadi! The Sheikh screamed, his voice raw with panic. Say something! Fadi! On Dahlia's screen, the signal from Fadi's phone was gone. The green dot had vanished. The audio feed was just the white noise of a dead line. On the other end, Sheikh Ahmed was still screaming into his own phone. The keyed-on commander reached over and calmly disconnected Dahlia's feed. He placed a hand on her shoulder. It is done, he said. He looked at the rest of the room. The asset is neutralized. Well done, everyone. Dahlia ripped her headphones off and ran to the bathroom, where she was violently ill. The symphony was over. This is the moment, the pivot, the title of the entire operation. What Hamas command said. In a concrete bunker beneath a mosque in Gaza City, Sheikh Ahmed threw his phone against the wall. It shattered. Silence, he roared. His two young aides, and a senior militant commander who sat with him, froze. What happened? The commander asked, his hand moving to the pistol on his hip. Was it a strike? Did you hear a missile? No, Ahmed's face was pale, his eyes wide. It wasn't a strike. It was on the line, in the phone. I was talking to him. He was... And then a noise. A click. He was breathing heavily, his mind racing. He was talking about the test. He said, "Tomorrow we will change." And he was gone. Just gone. "Get me a runner." The commander ordered one of the aides. "Send a team to the citrus grove, now. Full tactical. Go, go." The young man scrambled out of the room. Sheikh Ahmed sat down heavily. He was shaking, but not from fear, from a profound, creeping dread. "It wasn't an airstrike," he whispered, to himself as much as to the commander. There was no whistle, no boom. I would have heard it. The line would have cut. This was different. It was inside his phone. The commander stared at him. "That is not possible. The Jews, they cannot do that." "They can," Ahmed said, his voice hardening. "They can. They found him." He looked at the remains of his own phone on the floor. "And they used me to do it. I was on the line. They waited. They waited until I called." The implication of this settled on the room like a shroud. The most secure line between the head of operations and his chief engineer had been compromised. Not just compromised, it had been weaponized. An hour passed. It felt like a year. The young aide returned. He didn't have to say a word. His face was ashen and he was covered in dust. "Report," the commander barked. "The grove is fine," the aide stammered, his voice trembling. "The guards, they are alive. They said they heard nothing. A pop, like a tire, nothing more. We went inside the workshop." He stopped. He swallowed hard. "And?" Sheikh Ahmed said, his voice quiet. "He is gone, Sheikh. The architect. He is gone. The drones are fine. The room is fine. But it was his head. It's gone. We found this." The aide held up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside were the charred, melted fragments of a smartphone and a single undetonated micro battery. Sheikh Ahmed looked at the commander. The commander looked at the floor. "What did he say?" The commander asked the aide, his voice hollow. "What were his last words?" "What did you hear?" "Nothing," the aide whispered. "He was dead when we arrived. The phone, it was just pieces." "No," Sheikh Ahmed said, rising from his chair. He walked over to the aide and took the bag. "He means me. What did Fadi say to me?" He turned to the commander, his eyes burning with a new terrifying clarity. He said, "The sky will be ours." And then they killed him. The death of Fadi al-Masri was not a tactical loss. It was a strategic catastrophe. But the method of his death was something far worse. It was psychological warfare, executed with surgical precision. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Hamas command went dark. They initiated a full code black protocol. All operations were suspended. All phones, radios, and electronic devices were ordered to be shut down. The leadership, including Sheikh Ahmed, communicated only by handwritten messages, delivered by runners they had known since childhood. An emergency meeting was called in the deepest, most secure tunnel in their network. The senior leadership of Al-Qassam gathered around a wooden table lit by a single battery-powered lantern. In the center of the table, they had placed their smartphones, in a pile as if they were live grenades. No one wanted to touch them. It was the phone, the commander from the bunker, whose name was Ibrahim, stated. It was not a question. It was the phone from his cousin, Kamal. "Find Kamal," Sheikh Ahmed ordered. Kamal was already gone. His Katsa had extracted him and his family to Germany the moment the execute signal was sent. He would live out his life with a new name, haunted by what he had done, but his daughter was alive. "Finding Kamal does not solve the problem," a younger, tech-savvy commander interrupted. He pointed at the pile of phones. "Kamal gave him one. How do we know they have not given one to us? To me? To you, Sheikh?" A heavy, suffocating silence filled the tunnel. This was the true genius of the Mossad operation. They had not just killed a man. They had murdered trust. They had turned the single most essential tool of modern organization, the mobile phone, into an object of terror. "What did he say?" Ibrahim murmured. "I keep thinking about it. The sky will be ours. Was it a code? A signal to them? He was talking about his drones, Ahmed snapped. Do not fall into their traps. He was proud, that is all. But they listened, the young commander insisted, his voice rising. They heard him say it. They were in his ear, waiting. They could be in my ear right now. How many of us have clean phones from Germany? Every man in the room began to mentally retrace his steps. Every gift from a relative, every replacement device, every repaired laptop, every text message, every whispered word. The organization, which had been a nimble, networked insurgency, ground to a halt. It was paralyzed by a suspicion that was now rooted in fact. The commanders argued, they shouted, they accused each other. The hunt for the traitor began, a brutal internal purge that would kill more of their own men than the Mossad had in a year. The Ababil swarm drone program was finished, not because Fadi was dead, he had assistants who could have carried on, but because no one dared to go near his workshop. No one dared to touch his computer. No one dared to speak of the project above a whisper. The architect was dead, but the paranoia he left behind had crippled his entire organization. The story of Fadi al-Masri, the architect, became a legend in the intelligence world. It was a black operation, one that Israel would never officially confirm or deny. But the message was clear. It was a proof of concept demonstration, broadcast to every enemy of the state. The message was, we can reach you, anywhere, at any time, through anything. In the weeks that followed, intelligence reports from Gaza painted a picture of organizational collapse. Hamas was operationally blind. They had reverted to analog methods which were slow, inefficient, and easily tracked by traditional Mossad human and drone surveillance. Their command and control structure, once a flexible web, had been shattered. The commanders, once connected, were now isolated islands, terrified of the very technology that had empowered them. They would meet in person, in secret, but those meetings were now high risk. Mossad ground teams, guided by the dark electronic map, could now spot these analog gatherings with ease. The psychological impact was total. Hamas operatives were dismantling their cars, looking for trackers. They were smashing their televisions. They were speaking in code even to their wives in their own bedrooms. They had been infected with a virus, the virus of paranoia. And what did Hamas command say? In that tunnel, under the lantern's glow, they said everything. They said, we are naked. They said, who is next? They said, I can't trust my own brother. But the most important thing they said was, in fact, nothing. The most powerful response was the silence of commanders who refused to give orders over the radio, the silence of militants who refused to answer their phones, the silence of an organization that had been deafened and muted by a single perfectly executed pop. In Tel Aviv, Dalia returned to work. She was no longer a listener. She was transferred to the analysis division, where she would only read transcripts. She would never again have to hear a human voice in her headphones. But she too was haunted. She had been the last person to hear Fadi al-Masri's voice. She was the instrument of his death. She had also heard, in the frantic, terrified screams of Sheikh Ahmed, the sound of a new kind of war. A war where the battlefield was not the sky, but the circuitry in your pocket. A war where the most lethal weapon was the one you held to your own head. History is not just a record of battles and treaties. It is a story of whispers, of unseen levers, and of quiet tectonic shifts. The death of Fadi al-Masri was not the end of a man. It was the birth of a doctrine. The digital whisper operation, as it became known in classified Mossad histories, rewrote the rules of targeted assassination. It was clean. It was precise. It had zero collateral damage, in the traditional sense. The only thing damaged was the enemy's entire will to fight, to organize, and to trust. What did Hamas command say? In the end, it didn't matter what they said. It mattered what they did. They stopped talking. They stopped planning. They stopped innovating. They looked at their brothers, their cousins, and their commanders, and they saw a potential Kamal. They saw a potential bridge for an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere. The true ending of this story is not the explosion. It is the silence that followed. It is the image of a dozen powerful men in a dark tunnel, staring at a pile of inert plastic and glass, too terrified to touch their most powerful weapon. Fadi al-Masri had wanted to build a swarm to overwhelm a physical defense. But the Mossad had built a conceptual swarm, a swarm of doubt, of fear, of paranoia, and it had overwhelmed the human mind. The architect was dead, but his ghost, a digital phantom made of static and fear, would haunt the command structure of Hamas for a generation. They had been defeated not by a bomb, but by an idea. The idea that, at any moment, the person you trust most could be listening, and the device you hold most dear could be the instrument of your end. It was the last transmission, and the message in the end was for everyone. No one is offline. This was a deep dive into a complex world. If you want more stories from the shadows, more forensic breakdowns of intelligence and tradecraft, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching Cinematic Intel.